trying to find out how can we create a better world. And I'm here with an individual who wants to perhaps create a better world, who's getting really curious. And that's why I was like, man, I got to get him on camera. We were setting up and I met him. I'm like, man, I gotta talk to him just for a little bit. So share some of your thoughts about, the world and what you think is projected for our future.
So Mr. Man here, Corey and Jerry, I just say Mr. Man. So they gave me a little flyer, and something that really popped out to me was politics is designed for division, school is designed for obedience. And I know it seems a little ironic saying that on a campus, school is designed for obedience. You can go to college and still believe that school is obedience at the same time. But what really popped out to me was just seeing things like voluntarism. And I was just thinking, like, I learned about voluntarism. I learned about, these things which are often connected with, libertarian thoughts. A few months ago, within the past year, due to some political events, I kind of became more libertarian. And it's not that I'll just say it. Donald Trump. It's fine what your opinions are on the man. I'm just saying that something in there awakened me where I'm like, I don't know that the government is really the best option if this is the man we elect. You could disagree with that. In any case, that's not something that made me... It awakened something that was always in me. And so it's not that I was, specifically against Donald Trump. It was against the state as a whole. That kind of awakened me to it, more broadly.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to talk about how we're talking about libertarianism, anarchism. Anarchism is kind of a dirty word in our society.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's the word we should use. Libertarianism will work. What were we just talking about slavery and...
Yes. Yeah, so you mentioned democide, and I was like, that's death by government. Professor R.J. Rummel talks about this from Hawaii, and he wrote a whole book about it, and it's something you can look up publicly. It's like 300 million deaths in just the last century, which is insane. So it's a leading cause of death. And that concerns me because we usually look at the government as like a source of protection and order. And I'm like, how did that happen in history? And I often ask people, like, let me ask you a question real quick. Would you obey the law if it went against your conscience, or would you follow your conscience and disobey the law?
Thank you. That is a common thing that I think about, and I have become more and more, at the risk of seeming like being put on a list sometimes. There are some times where I feel like if a law is unjust, and I want to speak in a very narrow sense about this. I'm not saying you could do what you want just because you disagree with the law. But some laws, let's say like slavery back then, you mentioned slavery, if you were to disobey slavery back then, would you be doing something immoral? I don't think so. Yeah. We look to people like Harriet Tubman, and I don't know too much about Harriet Tubman.
Heroes.
But what is it, Underground Railroad? That's all I know about Harriet Tubman.
Exactly.
Something like she brought slaves into the Underground Railroad and all that. She disobeyed the law.
Do you know what the Underground Railroad is?
It was like transferring slaves, like getting them to free states.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was even abolitionists building towns, like whole towns away from the government to break the law. And some people lived there, and they had their own financial systems and everything. Josiah Warren made multiple towns. One of them had no government for over 13 years. Isn't that crazy?
And I don't think that any of us today would look at that and say that that's immoral.
Right.
So I think that there are times, in the worst case scenarios, again, I'm not trying to say that break a law because going 65 in a 40-mile speed zone, that's fine. Break the law. No. When it comes to things like slavery, extreme things that we can all agree with are immoral. That everyone can, I guess there is never going to be complete and total agreement, but there are some times you kind of think, okay, should this be legal, or would this be moral to follow? Right. Maybe it wouldn't be.
Yeah, for sure.
But I also wanted to talk about the pragmatic part of it, because we talked about how would you even set up a society like this? It's nice to think of a libertarian society and where freedom is more prevalent and where people could just live unmolested from excessive government intervention, let's say regulations, zoning laws. You know, you hear a push from some liberals like Ezra Klein of like a pro-abundance agenda, just like deregulating, you know, and for better flourishing of all people. And you think, okay, well, how would we even do that realistically? How could we live without a state top-down governing us? And, well, what did you bring up? I don't know.
Yeah, so I
me a few
used
points.
the slavery example you mentioned several times. I said that back in the day, someone could have said, well, who would pick cotton without the slaves?
Exactly.
Right? And well, if we freed the slaves, there'd be chaos. They would run amok, and these are like beasts. They have to be contained because they're not capable of enlightenment or free thinking. They're meant to be in that condition because that's who they are. That's who they've always been. You know, so we should keep them like that. It's like the is-ought fallacy. And we do this for us and everyday people by saying, well, these people are bad, so therefore, let's throw them in a cage, let's do this, when it might make the problem worse. In reality, we're finding out, wait, there's systems around the world where there's like this open jail system where they let people interact and they learn like mannerisms and they learn like growing food, and then they become a better character person, and then they're no longer creating crimes. So isn't that interesting? It's like punishment is actually making the problem worse, and our mentality of thinking these people are beasts and should be caged is primarily why we're punishing them, because we're not treating them like human beings. So how could we expect them to treat us as human beings, right? It's the golden rule. Right. So it's really like seeing these ancient teachings that maybe we didn't follow, right? And like Jesus says, love thy neighbor, and then he gets put on the cross by the government of Rome, the imperial cult, which says that we have to worship Caesar or worship, you know, Pompeo or whatever it is the ruler is. Yeah, and some of these governments lasted for thousands of years. In America is not even, 300 years old? We think we're like the best, we're founded by God, and it's like, but you look at the past, you're like, are we sure? Right, so these are just some questions.
Pretty messed up history in America.
Yeah.
And so basically all that I would want to say to people is like, you know, you think about what is necessary for a society to flourish, what is necessary for people as a collective to flourish. Does it require top-down a state, which you mentioned earlier? We allowed violence for slaves back then, and we rightly consider it wrong today. We allow violence against some people for things that I think a lot of us would say no right now, like let's say marijuana laws or a lot of drug laws. Like, do we really need violence against those people? Because at the end of the day, like, a prison, in a broad sense, you could agree with the prison system as a whole, but at the end of the day, it is still a form of kidnapping. Is that a kidnapping that is just? Is it worth it? I don't know.
Maybe
if it's...
we need different models and not just, you know, one centralized system, right? Like, I'm not saying this is, you know, my idea is the best idea.
Right.
I think that's why I talk about voluntarism, because it's like people can live the life they want to live by their choice, and no one else is compelled to have to live by that centralized system that, you know, that someone thinks is like the way the whole world should work. Like, are we gods? Are we to decide how everything should work? You know, it's like, it's the question of how much are we beyond our nature, or perceiving other people as either lower than ourselves or higher than ourselves, when in reality, aren't we all equal?
Yeah, and that kind of bleeds into our power structures, all this stuff. And, you know, America, I think, has done better than America's done better than many societies in history. Our Constitution is...
Like, we're moving there, right?
We're morally progressing throughout history. And this isn't to say overthrow the government. I'm not, you know... Right. But, and something that I also want to mention, besides, like, you know, should we consider a libertarian society, a more libertarian society, and also the pragmatic aspects of, like, oh, well, we also, you know, made these same excuses for slavery back then. Another thing is, and maybe my last point that I want to make is an interesting point that I thought of regarding the movie The Purge, or the books, I don't know what they are. The movie The Purge. And, you know, one day of the year, or whatever it is, you get to do any crime you want, and you won't be penalized for it. And we look at that and say, oh my gosh, we didn't have laws. That would be absolutely terrible. It would just be open season. But you have to consider that For 99% of human history, we were living in stateless societies. And we weren't, I'm not saying it was necessarily the best place to live back then. I'd rather live now in a society which happens to be statist.
Yeah.
But you also have to consider a point by Peter Kropotkin, and it's not that I've honestly read any of his books. I'm not a reader, contrary to what these might say. But Peter Kropotkin made a really good point, and this is what I'll leave on, is humans are not meant to be competitors to each other.
Sure.
We've evolved to be cooperators. And we could think of, if we just lived one day without rules, we would all kill each other. Well, I mean,
rules. Does morality come from politicians?
And another thing, laws are perpendicular to morality. They might be, they might not be moral.
So
but
we need them validated by politicians?
Right. So who gets to decide? And at the end of the day, whether it's a law or not, people are still going to be committing violence. And people, at the end of the day, people want to cooperate with each other, as Peter Kropotkin said. And I think that is something we should keep in mind with a libertarian society, that we don't always need coercion. I mean, look, if it were not against the law, I wouldn't kill you. Exactly. I still wouldn't kill. Would
because
you kill me?
It's not in your best interest to do so, because it would also open the potential for you to get hurt. And it's just learning the laws.
That's a great point you hold. That's the point.
Well, it's like you're not going to purposely crash into a car in the road because you don't want to get into an accident.
Exactly.
So it's like you're doing it for your own safety, your own health. And health, does that come from a politician? Morality, does that come from a politician? If anything, it's kind of like the opposite. These are psychopaths, sociopaths that want that position. The average person, like if I ask a really good person, I'm like, man, you should be a ruler. They're going to be like, I don't want to be. it's like, oh, darn it. Well, then who's going to be the ones in control? It's like, and so then you might say, well, there might be someone who wants to do it, and so they sacrifice their time. Well, why do they have to sacrifice? And what's this idea of corruption? When everybody's bowing down to you, putting you up on high on a pedestal, is that the way we should treat humans? Is that what comes of that psychology, right? So these are just questions, and I really appreciate you for engaging this conversation, because another, I guess, as a final point I'll make is, notice I don't use the language libertarian society or voluntarist society, right? What I call it is reality. And I would argue that it's reality for us not to be slaves, just as much as it is reality that we are all human beings on one country of the world, and our countrymen are mankind. As the #1 abolitionist newspaper, actually, that was their motto. I know, right? It's like that. What future thinking? It's amazing.
I don't know that newspaper.
It's called The Liberator, and it was the #1 abolitionist newspaper in the 1800s. And so that motto was just profound. But because that's so future thinking. But yeah, if you think about it like that, it's like, okay, what's natural versus what's artificial? What's man-made versus what are we trying to understand?
Yeah.
And I think it's when it comes to growing food, like one of the things on the list, it's like, could we work with nature, or are we trying to replace nature? Are we trying to engineer our own plants or learn from the plants that already exist, because we find out it's not going to be healthy for us in the long run? So just some things to think about, and you connect it through all the disciplines, and you start to realize it's a philosophy of becoming more in touch with oneself, or one's own psyche and nature, and the world at large.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. It's not a political philosophy or economics. It's more like it's a psychological revolution.
Yeah, there are different ways of seeing, and they overlap. We're not we're not in the exact same Venn diagram. There is a difference, but there is a lot of overlap in just fundamentally, it seems, just kind of letting people do their own thing instead of, whether it's society or especially the states, politics, education. It's like there's a lot of problems with this, and maybe there are different ways to go about society. Exactly. And of course, this isn't to say burn everything down. Listen, I mean, I think we're all living good lives here on the broad spectrum. And so just because some things are bad, you don't burn the whole thing down.
Exactly.
Some people do that, and I don't appreciate that.
I'm not about attacking. I'm about building the new and showing by example.
Exactly.
Right. So the abolitionists, they didn't just say slavery is bad. and we're just going to try to convince you. They were like, let's build towns, break away from the system, show you what it looks like. Let's educate you. Let's arm you. Like, they actually empowering them, not saying, let's just tear something down. Although abolitionism is about, ending something, they were at the same time building new systems that would take its place. And cotton production actually got better after the end of slavery. So it's like all these concerns people had, and the abolitionists were defenseless. They were like, well, you have all the economic arguments. We can't fight you because that's the way we've been doing things for 4,000 years. But guess what? We know what's right. And so we trust in what's right, that it will eventually lead to even better outcomes. And they were right.
Yeah.
I mean, now we have more prosperity than ever, and people are able to live in peace, and people are able to become enlightened. But, we limit ourselves with justifications and mindsets. Yeah. And the parent who tells the kid, you can't do that, makes the kid want to rebel more, So I'm not about creating rebellions or anything. I'm about free thinkers and open minds. So you've been demonstrating that this whole conversation. So I really appreciate meeting you. You don't want to share your name or anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I appreciate it. No, I thank you so much and hope to connect with you in the future.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate everybody.